Okay, hello again, everybody. Back again with Sydney. She was very gracious enough to come back, and I'm really excited to have this discussion with her because today we're going to talk about Dune, and we're just going to kind of have not super in depth, but kind of just a general discussion about Dune because I think we both really like it, and I think Sydney, I think you have an interesting perspective on it, and so I just wanted to kind of delve into that. So I guess why don't you just I don't know talk about just refresh people on yourself, what you do, what made you really excited for Dune. So yeah, if you want to talk about that a bit.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Sydney. I was on before. We talked about M. Night Shyamalan, did a deep dive. Yep, I make videos on YouTube. I'm over on Letterboxd, and I actually did a video covering Dune after it came out, but that was spoiler free. So I'm very excited to kind of have the freedom to talk spoilers, especially as someone who's read the book. I definitely have some opinions on what they included, what they didn't. So yeah, should be a very interesting discussion.
Yeah, that's what I'm excited about is just like really having a deep dive, and especially for someone like yourself who's like read the book. And it seemed like when this film like was being talked about, it made you want to get into Dune.
Yes. So I did not read the book until they announced the film. So I'm not like a lifelong Dune fan. I'm definitely on the younger side for people who have gotten into it. And I totally fell in love with the book. I think that the themes are just so powerful, just kind of with Paul as this messianic figure. And I know you mentioned you want to get into religion later. I think that it's just super, super interesting. And I think it's interesting to see how people are perceiving it because it is a little darker than something like Star Wars. We're dealing with some heavy stuff. So
It's been really interesting seeing the reaction that people have to this film because of kind of the way it was marketed. And I was just thinking about the marketing recently, and I was like, wow, the trailers really kind of gave a lot of the more, I guess, tantalizing, I guess I would say, parts of the film. They put them out there, and it's just out there. But there's so much more, like there's so much, like there's a lot in this film, and there's a lot in Dune. Just it's a very dense. A lot of people use that word dense kind of film, and the book is dense too. So why don't we just start with like some of the things that really, really stood out that we liked in the film? Was there a particular scene or a particular performance that for you just like was magnificent, that just really just fit perfectly what you wanted?
yeah, I can easily say that my favorite part of the book, and obviously in turn what I was looking forward to the most in the movie, was Paul and Jessica and kind of their relationship. I think they have such an interesting mother and son relationship. There are a lot of great scenes in the book. Just kind of how Paul is experiencing these visions, and he's kind of having a huge internal conflict that Jessica doesn't really know what's going on with him. And there was a scene in the book where they're in the desert that they did include in the movie, and I thought they totally nailed it. It was just full of emotion and intensity. Both of their performances are incredible as well, Timothy Chalamet and Rebecca Ferguson. I can't say that anyone wasn't great in the cast, but they were definitely the standouts for me. I thought they were phenomenal.
Yeah, Rebecca Ferguson is like, she's always just so good. It's like kind of crazy how there's all these things, that she's in, and she's just amazing in all of them. For Halloween, I was watching Dr. Sleep, and she's incredible in that. She's in Mission Impossible. She's in this, and she's kind of like really one of the, in terms of like the stuff to do for actors, her and Timothy Chalamet have the most, and she really gets to emote a lot in this film.
Exactly. Yeah, kind of like suffering in silence. She shows it really well. And yeah, I love her as an actress. I fell in love with her when I saw Mission Impossible Fallout. And you mentioned Dr. Sleep. I haven't seen Dr. Sleep, but I saw some tweets going around where people were like, "Oh my God, that was Rebecca Ferguson." I like didn't know who she was. And so I'm really glad that she's getting recognition now because she seriously does. She adds so much to every film that she's in, but it's kind of subtle. Like she's just like a very solid actress.
Yeah, she's extremely solid. So I'm guessing the scene that you really like was in the still tent.
Yes. Yep. Oh yeah, we're talking spoilers. I'm still in like spoiler.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
But yeah, such an intense scene. Just kind of, yeah. I mean, they just lost everything.
Yeah.
They know that Leto is dead. And Paul is he's finally having visions of his future where he's talking about like a war in my name, and he sees all the pain and bloodshed that's going to come for him. And that moment when she's kind of trying to console him and he goes, "Get off me," in the voice. Yeah, really impactful moment for me.
Yeah, I really like, what is it? I'm trying to find exactly what he says. Like, there's a war in my name, and they're like a warrior religion worshiping at the altar of my father's skull.
Yeah.
A holy war across the galaxy, like unquenchable fire. And it's like, whoa. Like,
yeah, I know. And in the book, it's called the Jihad, like his kind of, what's happening there. And they chose to omit that word. But I think it kind of did add kind of this intimidating and brutal factor to it. But I think we're going to see a lot more of that in part 2 as well.
Yeah, I believe in one of the trailers, he uses the word crusade once.
Okay.
And I guess they decided to totally get away from that. I understand.
Yeah, definitely some stuff they had to tiptoe with this one.
But yeah, like you said, you know, it's a holy war, and that's just so, it's scary, right? It's scary to see himself like propped up almost like as a god figure, being worshipped, and he now understands he has this dark purpose. It's a dark purpose. You know, this isn't Luke Skywalker, the cute guy who's out, oh, I'm gonna get the power conversion on the Star Destroyer. No, this is a dude who's like, his destiny is really kind of bad. And another thing in Dune is like, can he get away from that? Can he get away from his destiny, or is he stuck? You know, and we're just gonna have to watch the next part to find out. But it's really kind of crazy to see him being thrown all this stuff, and he just wants to, you know, he just loves his dad, and he didn't ask for the Bene Gesserit stuff to get thrown in on him. It's crazy. It's great. That scene is really good. It's really, really
great. And that's an interesting point kind of about like his destiny. Can he do anything about it? Because there is like this supernatural aspect of like, it's a prophecy, like it's been predicted, and now he's gonna kind of have to come into that. Like, that's scary for him.
It's super scary. Yeah. And he didn't want any of it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it is, again, how you brought up, like, this isn't Star Wars. Like, Frank Herbert wanted to tell us that, like, maybe a hero isn't a good thing. And I mentioned in my video the quote in the book by Liette Kynes. It's like, no more terrible thing could befall your people than for them to fall into the hands of a hero. That's kind of the whole point of Paul's journey. Is it right to prop up this person and have this messianic figure, or is it only going to bring death and destruction?
Yeah, the propping up. Oh man, when we talk about the Bene Gesserit, I think the Bene Gesserit.
So ready for the Bene Gesserit conversation.
Yeah, I feel like the Bene Gesserit is the most interesting part of this whole universe, and people haven't discovered it yet because it is so deep.
Oh, and
we're like
at the barely skimmed the surface.
Oh man, there is so much stuff going on with the Bene Gesserit, and I'm excited for it. I really am. So I guess just to talk about, just to give an example for me, one of my favorite scenes, I really liked that. I guess the first one I'll start with. I really liked the scene when the Reverend Mother shows up, and we really kind of feel what the Bene Gesserit are like in this film. First off, it's the music is great. We get that kind of chanting, and then their spaceship shows up, and it's raining. It's very atmospheric, and then they all come out of the spaceship, and man, the way they shot that scene is like unbelievable.
Yeah,
it was unbelievable. It's like, again, it's like something you would hang on your wall. It's such a great fusion of like sci-fi, but also kind of like real world, old world stuff, that the clash just creates this unique thing.
Right. It is. It's this very like intense, like mysticism. Like you don't really see that anywhere else. It's a really interesting combination of vibes and kind of, like old religion playing into it too.
Because they're basically wearing like a burqa. Like that's what we would interpret it as, like visually.
Yeah.
But they're coming down in a spaceship.
Yeah, definitely a lot to take in.
Yeah. But yeah, it's so well shot. I mean, it's so well shot. It's beautiful. And then again, we get to see Jessica, and there's a lot going on under the surface with her character.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think it's honestly one of the most interesting parts of the film is like, where's she gonna go? What is she thinking? What is she doing? Who does she work for? Does she love?
Right.
Who does she love? What are the machinations going on there? And we can kind of see a little bit of it, but there's so much to question and to ponder.
Right. And that's why I feel like the reception of this film has been interesting, because there is so much going on behind the scenes that, like, obviously if you read the book, but they didn't dive into a lot about, like, I'm thinking also of Lady Jessica and Leto never got married, but we only know that from one line that he says where he's like, I should have married you. In the book, there's obviously like 20 pages talking about like why they didn't get married and kind of like what she means to him. And that's why we've never gotten an adaptation like this, because it is like so dense. It's like, how do you even fit all that into a movie, no matter how long you want to make it? But I think that Denis did a really great job adapting it. I don't know like how much you remember from the book, but it felt like I was reading the book again. Honestly. Yeah.
I mean, I don't recall a lot myself. I mean, my whole thing was I wanted to see this film and be super biased by his interpretation of the book, honestly. Right. I wanted to live in his world.
Okay.
Which was nice. And since then, I've kind of expanded my Dune horizon. It's kind of hard for me to not voraciously want to consume more stuff because it's just so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this was definitely sort of my entry point, and I wanted to like kind of see the world and then fill in the gaps with stuff that I wanted to get.
Exactly. That's good. That's like a really good, it's good to have differing perspectives, because most people who are going to see it haven't read the book.
Yeah.
Now everyone's reading the book, which is awesome also.
Yeah. The book became the #1 on Amazon in sci-fi.
Yeah, and I think Messiah is like the sequel. Dune Messiah is like I just bought Messiah right after I saw the movie, and I think that's like number 13 now or something.
It's great for the book, which is great. Yeah. I mean, it's a great book. It's one of the great pieces of sci-fi.
It is, literature. Maybe even like the great piece of sci-fi. I mean, it preceded all these other things. It kind of informed things like Star Wars, and I feel like no one even knew it existed. Until recently.
Yeah, I mean, the nerds knew. It was just a different time.
The nerds totally knew. The nerds totally knew.
It's just so funny, like, thinking about, like, at that time, that stuff was, like, kind of niche. It was a niche thing. It was, like, only a couple, the Sci-Fi Book Club would get together every Wednesday, and they'd buy a new book, and they'd talk about it. Most people would read kind of, like, the big, Steinbeck kind of novels. They wouldn't get into this other stuff. But now it's like there's a huge market for it, and it's great. It's great.
It is great.
So it's exciting to see more people reading the book and getting into Dune, just the Duneverse. I just want more.
I hadn't heard that until you said it. I love that, the Duneverse.
Yeah. But the other thing I really liked about the scene, so like the way they shot it was beautiful. The way Jessica looked. So another question I have for you is like, so when you first heard them use the voice. So when you first heard Paul use the voice, how did that impact you?
Right. That's a really good question, because there are a few things in the book that are very hard to put onto the screen. The shields are another one that I think of, because in David Lynch's Dune, the 1984 version of Dune, the shields are like so like it's like it was the 80s, so obviously they're very limited in what they can do. The shields I thought looked great, and the voice, I wasn't sure what to expect, but I liked it. I thought that it kind of, definitely really portrayed kind of like how it gets in your head. And I watched a video of Denis talking about how exactly he would pull off making the audience have that experience of being impacted by the voice. And so he did talk about the scene with the Bene Gesserit grandmother and the Gom Jabbar, the box in the hand scene, how Paul kind of is in there and she goes, what she says, kneel or something.
Yeah, come here, kneel.
Yeah, exactly. And he kind of just skips so that all of a sudden Paul is kneeling. So he's like, it would look a little silly to have Paul just like walk across the room and kneel. So he's kind of putting us into Paul's perspective. And it's like, you don't even know what happens. And all of a sudden you're doing what they want you to.
Slight dig at David Lynch, but no, I think especially when the Reverend Mother uses the voice, and you hear it in a legitimate like a Dolby or an IMAX theater, it's incredible.
Right.
It's an incredibly genius use of sound design. By the way, Oscars, this movie has to win at least like 4 or 5 in the technical categories.
I think at least like I know like however people are perceiving the story, like on a technical level, it's perfect.
It's perfect.
Yeah, especially as a theatrical experience, it's like a must see.
Yeah.
In the theater.
And this scene is like the Gom Jabbar scene is like a perfect example. She uses the voice, and they do these techniques that are just so brilliant. Like, yeah, the way that he like made the light disappear while moving the camera towards him, and then like you're just, oh, I'm in front of her now.
Right.
Yeah, it's so brilliant. And like the way the sound reverberates, and you can hear multiple people. So it's like there's a bass level, then there's multiple voices that all sound different, all hitting you at the same time.
Right. Completely immersive.
Yeah, it's so brilliant. It's so brilliant. And especially like the fact that there's a difference between how he sounds and how she sounds, right? Because she's, you know, she's a Jedi master, whatever.
Kinda.
She's like at the highest level, and so she has total control of what the voice is. And I guess we should maybe talk a little bit about like where their powers come from, because my understanding, you know, is that they're summoning their ancestors, right, when they use some of these powers.
Yeah, honestly, like I'm not a Bene Gesserit expert.
Scholar.
There's so much that happened in the book. I'm wondering if I'm ever going to reread the book, because there's so much going on. But yeah, have you done research?
I've done a little bit, and that was some of the things that I've run across, was that's another interesting part that they put in this film, is like it's always a female voice. Even when Paul uses it, it's a female voice, because he's channeling the women on his maternal side. He's channeling them to use these powers to control people, which is really brilliant. It's really interesting, brilliant. Because that, like, you know, again, it's some high level stuff. You know, you see it, you don't know that, you're just experiencing it. You don't have to know it, but that's why the voice is female that you're hearing.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, well, good on Frank Herbert for kind of, well, obviously he didn't portray that in the book, but I do think that Frank Herbert put a lot of importance on the women in Dune, and just kind of how the Bene Gesserit is like such a powerful organization, and kind of like exemplary of like how we view women in society like currently, is that it's like women are so powerful and capable of so much, but it's kind of like in a quiet way. And I think that the Bene Gesserit are very like backdoor, like they're kind of running everything. They
are the absolute
they're
power
not the face of the operation, you know.
They are not. It's really, and this scene is so brilliant, you know, and this is really, to me, this is quintessential Dune, right? The Gom Jabbar test.
Oh yeah.
You know,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Put your hand in the box. All that's in the hand is pain. All that's in the box is pain. And it's really interesting. So I guess just to kind of have a slight aside, one of the main things I've seen a lot of people who read the book kind of have quibbles about is the fact that Jessica is depicted in a very emotional, she emotes. We see her emoting. And in the book, she's more stoic. So how did that come across for you?
Interesting. I don't know if I agree. I think that Jessica does, maybe not emoting, like she definitely was like crying a lot in the film. And I don't know if you really showed her crying a lot in the book, but you do get most of the kind of like internal dialogue. A lot of it comes from Lady Jessica. There's a scene in the book, it's the banquet scene, that I've seen a lot of people talking about, that they wish that was a scene that I really wish was included. And a lot of that scene is kind of like this internal dialogue. It's being narrated by the character's thoughts. So I understand why it would be kind of hard to adapt. But a lot of it is kind of like Jessica, like worrying about the dynamics of everything that's going on, and kind of her, because the Bene Gesserit, and this is something that they didn't put in the film too much, and I'm wondering if he'll dive deeper into it in part 2, but the Bene Gesserit can read people like so well, like almost to the point that they're like reading your mind, that they can kind of read body language and like facial expressions so well. That's what made the banquet scene so interesting. And there's also a part in the book where Leto thinks that Lady Jessica was the one who planned the assassination attempt against him. So he thinks that she's betrayed him. Dr. Yui is kind of planting that seed in his head. So there's a lot of emotional stuff going on for her, you know, and maybe it's not explicitly like she's crying. And I definitely understand people talking about like that being a decision that they made in the film for her to be crying in certain parts, and kind of maybe the only one who cries in a lot of the film. But there is definitely a lot on her shoulders. So I don't think it was like an illogical decision.
I think it makes sense. I really do, that they made her, you know, visually emote. And in this scene in particular, it's almost like she's feeling what it's a mirror to what Paul is feeling in a way. I mean, there seems to be a lot of scenes where I almost feel like, at least my interpretation, going cold just seeing the film was, I really felt like there are many times where Lady Jessica was like either reading Paul's feelings or like understanding what he was feeling or thinking or seeing in a very strong way. At least it felt like was the implication to me. And this scene in particular, you know, you know, in the book, he's like in his mind reciting the Litany of Fear, and instead of like having these silly voiceovers like the Dune, you know, 84, which didn't really work, he had her cite it outside of the door because she's so afraid of him dying, which I thought was smart. My only kind of nitpick is that the way she read the line, I think, made it hard for people to totally understand what she was saying.
Right.
But I think it kind of it got the point across. Like, a lot of people like that scene. I've heard people talk about that scene, and what they got across was that she's a witch, but she's worried for her son. And I feel like that's all you really need to know, right?
Yeah, I know. Have you seen the tweet that's like, the summary of Dune is that like I got together with a witch and now my son has anxiety.
It's pretty accurate.
But it kind of is like, it's like her son is just like going off the rails, like burdened with terrible purpose, and all she's doing is reacting and like trying to do her best. But Paul is so powerful, and like this is his destiny. She's kind of just along for the ride, and that's what happens in the end when they're amongst the Fremen, and she's like, we gotta go, like this has just gone terribly, and he's like, I know that this is where my destiny is, like we're staying. And
I really like that, because that's the real turning point for his character. He makes that choice,
right? Yeah, that was actually, you're right, that was a really important moment for him,
and he decides
into it.
This is where he wants to be. This is what he wants. He's not going to let someone else dictate what he's going to be or do. Right. He's chosen a path. He sees it. You know, he has these visions of it. He's had the visions the whole time, and he sees Chani, and he sees Jamis, and he sees all these, you know, people. That great battle scene where all the Fadakin, they're not named, but that's probably basically what they are, fighting the Sardaukar, and then a freaking worm is bursting out of the... Man, this makes you very excited for part 2. But he sees his destiny, 100%. He sees his destiny. And then later on in this, after he passes the test, you know, they're leaving, and then we get another one of the best shots I've basically ever seen, honestly. Like, they're all walking, and it's like the camera's panning with them, and there's like that little globular light thing that moves. And like the ground is wet, and you can see if their clothes are wet, and you can then see the reflections. I don't know. It's just one of the best shots I've ever seen, honestly, ever. Like,
wait, you're talking towards the end, or this was earlier?
So this is like, after they've given Paul the test, and she's like, you know, young human, I hope you live, and she leaves.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. With the globe is like they're in. Yeah. I loved the design for everything inside of, I don't know what you would call it, the building that they live in. Such detail, and kind of, I think it does trace back kind of to like old religion and how there's kind of these very detailed murals of like the sandworm and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And so then they evoke, like, another thing about this is Paul has many, he goes by many names, right? Basically.
Yes.
He has many titles. He has many names, many monikers, as it were. And, this is where we get the Kwisatz Haderach the first time.
Yes.
So she, and the other thing too is, so Jessica kind of purposely gave Leto a son out of love, but that could have complicated things for his destiny, right?
Right.
So she did it out of love, but maybe love caused some problems for him in his life that he wouldn't have had if he was not.
Yeah, exactly. I know, that was a whole nother thing, that it's like she was expected to have a daughter, and that's even more on her, kind of this shame, and she like took a huge risk. And yeah.
But again, she did it out of love.
Yeah.
He wanted a son, and that's another thing that I found interesting too, because like there's never a talk of him being a bastard child. Like he's a legitimate heir. Paul is a legitimate heir to the throne and viewed as such all the time. Even though, again, the Bene Gesserit purposely got Jessica to be with Leto, and we're gonna find out why, probably, but it's a kind of crazy reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're pulling the strings, but then she went against their plan. So she went against the most powerful organization in this universe, and it's like, what's gonna happen because of that?
Right. I know, and it is interesting, because it's like she took that risk, but it's kind of like, does anyone really have free will in this situation? Like, it is the prophecy, and they're mixing bloodlines, trying to create this prophetic figure. It's gonna come whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And then she says, the way has been made for him. Hopefully he doesn't squander it.
Yeah, I know.
And they take off.
Just something like, such potential wasted.
Yeah, so much potential
or something.
Yeah, so much potential wasted in a male. That's what she says. It's great.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Really, really awesome stuff. I think that for people who haven't read the book and aren't familiar, like, I think that they'll talk more about all of that in part 2, maybe, and it'll add more context for the first film, which is a pro and con of it being a part 1.
Yeah, there's just so much there. There's so much there. It's really hard to kind of cover all of it.
It's really hard.
Because there's a lot.
I did definitely, like, I felt like he was, like, running through scenes, like, really quick. Like, it was good because it was fast-paced, but there were scenes that I was like, this was such a good scene. I wish it could hang on just a little bit longer. I'm sure he wanted to make a 10-hour movie, but you just, if you want people to go see it, you can't be making it like 3.5 hours long. So it's gotta be shaved down, unfortunately.
Yeah. So were there any other scenes for you that really just like kind of stuck out, were really powerful?
Another scene that I loved is when he fights Jamis at the end, because that was such an impactful scene in the book. And they nailed the very moment that Lady Jessica is like, Paul's never killed a man, because that was like a really huge moment. Like, he's taken blood, and that was kind of happening at the same time of like when he decided to stay with the Fremen, he's kind of embracing his destiny and embarking on this path that he knows is going to be dark. Like, he has a dark side to him, and he's going to do some dark stuff, and that was like the beginning of that journey. I just think it's so interesting.
That scene is great. And I really like when he was kind of having those visions of the future, and that voice, again, it's this female voice, kind of like the ancestors telling him, rise. Paul Atreides has to die for the Kwisatz Haderach to rise.
Right.
Find the friend and all that other stuff. It's just very, very interesting. It does a really good job of just like kind of getting into what you would imagine the vision would be.
Right.
It's just because it clearly feels like a vision. It really feels like something that would be in your head.
Yeah, you can definitely feel, and yeah, just like kind of the dreamlike, and yeah, all those voices, and like along with the score. And I really liked, I mentioned this in my video, that I love their use of like silence in a lot of scenes where he's kind of just like functioning normally, and then all of a sudden it'll hit him that this picture's kind of coming together with him, especially in the spice harvester sequence, which I also loved, when he's trying to help everyone, and he just like falls to his knees, like he's like surrendering to the desert, like this is like there's some like very overwhelming purpose for him here, but he doesn't quite know what it is. And it's yeah, that was another very impactful moment for me.
Yeah, I really like that scene too, the spice harvester scene,
Yeah,
because you just get so much of everything. Like,
right.
it's just because it's beautiful. It's kind of scary because you see this worm like eat a massive,
Yeah.
like just like it's nothing. Like it's nothing. The worm eats it.
Yeah, I know. The worms are like, oh my gosh, it's so cool.
It's so cool.
They do
Yeah.
a really good job. And yeah, they're scary. They're scary as hell.
One of my favorite things is like, so Leah Kynes is incredible in this film.
Right.
Incredible. And the actor they got, incredible. She tops off that amazing scene by, saying the prayer to Shai Hulud.
Yeah.
Which it's just so brilliant, because like for me, that's the stuff that really makes it palpable. It's like, okay, there's a worm. Like that's crazy. But for them, the worm is like everything. It represents the world.
Yeah,
to them.
exactly.
It's like their religious icon. And yeah, I really, really like that, because it just makes it feel, because other films kind of hand wave the stuff, because it makes more sense. Because when the more palpable you make it, the more you have to relate it to how human beings actually deal with religion, and it becomes complicated. Because human beings deal with religion in complicated ways. When some people don't believe in the same thing, causes conflict. But that's kind of the interesting part of it. And this film really lays it down that these people have these real beliefs, and our friends, the Bene Gesserit, are weaving stuff into people's minds to lead the way for someone to come, a prophecy or Messiah. They're just always putting these things out there. And so they're seeding these different parts of religions, which, maybe our friend Paul is going to be a beneficiary of.
Right.
But it's based on a real thing. Like, there's a real worm. The worms are very powerful. They're like the most incredible thing on the planet. And, they have this, a prayer to Shai. And I don't know. It's just so cool to me. It's so makes the world so real.
Yeah. And I definitely feel, the worms, even Shai Hulud, like even takes place over some prophetic figure like Paul. Because I feel like the Fremen definitely represent like this indigenous population and like their connection to nature. The worm kind of represents nature and brings in these kind of ecological themes of just that, the desert, like the worms, like it's everything. Like we're so small compared to it, and we kind of have to function on its terms. And it is, I like the themes that get brought in about like imperialism and kind of like native communities. And I'm excited to see where it goes. I also was going to bring up that I don't know if there's much significance to this, but they only say, like you were saying, Paul goes by many names. They only say Muad'Dib once, I think. But it's so quick. Like I almost didn't even notice that they said it. I think that Chani said it.
Because he's called the Mahdi.
Muad'Dib. Well, yeah. I don't know the pronunciation. I listened to the audiobook to read it for so much of it, and I'm pretty sure it was read by Frank Herbert, but they pronounced things a lot different in the movie. Like in the audiobook it was Harkonnens, but then in the movie it was Harkonnens. So I keep like switching like how I say it.
I think it's fine to say it either way. So here's what I've heard in terms of pronunciations.
Okay.
Was that someone found, it wasn't the audiobook, but it was like some actual recording of Frank Herbert talking about these things. And that's where they got the pronunciations in this book from.
Oh, okay. I trust that. Maybe I was totally wrong about my audiobook.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, but Harkonnen, no matter what, they're really weird, slimy.
I know, yeah. I know. I want to talk about that a little bit later, because I think that again, with the cinematography and everything, the atmosphere that they created for the Harkonnen is like so cool and gross and slimy, and they have a pet spider.
Oh, the pet spider. We'll have to talk about the pet spider.
Yeah.
That's Spider-Man.
It was so funny when he was like, "Oh, he won't listen to you. He doesn't like understand your language." Yeah. She uses the voice. She's like, it understands.
It crawls away in its hands.
Oh, it's so strange.
Oh my god. Yeah, and even that could be a setup for more stuff with the Harkonnen.
Exactly.
Right? Like that's just like a taste.
And there are even like we haven't met Fade Routha yet. And
when we talk about our fan casting, that'll be a fun.
And we'll talk about that when we talk about fan casting.
Yeah. So speaking of like other planets, so I think probably my absolute favorite scene, and it's very, very short, but I think just nailed it in this film, is the Sardakar's planet. Was it Secunda? I forget exactly what it's called.
I don't remember.
I know, right? It's such a crazy name.
Let
me see if I can find it. But anyway, so the main thing about that scene was that, first off, it's very brief, but it gives you so much information.
My gosh, yeah.
Like, without telling us anything. They don't have to say anything, but we get all of it. We see the planet, it's raining. There's this massive... So first off, that, like, wide shot of the army is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Just the scale, yeah.
The scale, yeah. So we see it's a huge army. It says, this planet is their it's like basically the Imperial army planet.
Mm-hmm.
We see that it's raining really hard, and there are people, I don't know who they are. I've heard different things once looking into it, but there are people that are crucified upside down.
Right.
Which for me is particularly like effective because that's because first off, crucifixion is a religious thing in and of itself. You show someone crucified, okay, I get it. There's a religious context here, which is brilliant because there is a religious backing to this army that they didn't explicitly talk about. But when you crucify someone upside down, now we're going deeper.
Oh yeah,
it's darker.
Oh yeah. Well, one thing being like it was like their blood was being drained and then going in these little. The word has lost me right now, but yeah.
Yeah, they were like a receptacle, and it was they were blessing their soldiers going into war with so what I read was that those were actually basically people that failed the assignment.
Oh, interesting.
So when I originally saw it, and the film was different, maybe those are victims. I mean, I kind of like it that way, to be honest. Like those are like the people that they've defeated, and they take some of them back and they crucify them, and then they take their blood.
Hopes to kill more. Yeah, it's like yeah.
But either way, they crucify these people. They take their blood, and then they bless their soldiers going off into battle. And by the way, like the music, man, the throat singing.
Yeah,
it's just so perfect.
The score is insane. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's Seleucia Secundus is the name of the planet.
Oh, the planet. Okay.
Yeah, the Imperial Army planet. This scene is perfect to me.
It is. It's just so like intense. But yeah, it was just quick enough that it leaves a little mystery. Like you're just like so frightened by like what is happening. And yeah, and that Piter was kind of like going in. I wish I'd rewatched this scene because I forget exactly the dialogue that happens, but he talks to that one soldier.
Yeah. He basically
really
says to him, "Oh, well, we need." Well, so the guy, the leader of the Sardaukar army, he's like, "Well, why do you guys need us? Because you guys outnumber the Atreides." He's like, "Well, De Veers is like, oh, well, like they have Gurney Alec and Duncan Idaho. They're really well trained." And he's like, "Well trained? Like, do you know who we are?"
Yeah.
We're the Emperor's blade. Anyone who comes against us falls.
Right.
And he's like, "Okay, fine, just 3 legions, as we said, as we agreed."
Yeah. And that I know, and then it gets so and something like that, kind of just like little tiny lines of dialogue like that reinforce just how skilled, like the Atreides army is. And then soon we learn that the Fremen have got something that no one really knew that they had going on, but they're very good fighters. So all the hints are there, but definitely on a rewatch you pick up and you're like, okay, Denis, I see the world building that you're doing.
Yeah, the Salusa Secunda scene is just like so perfect. The throat singing. There's a guy on a minaret, like I guess he's the one singing to them.
Oh, okay.
That's the idea. And he's like doing these like, hand movements or something. I love it, man. I don't like, there's almost like a part of it is like not knowing everything makes it more interesting, because then you're just like, this could be anything. This could mean anything, but I know it's very dark, and I know they're coming to kill people.
Exactly.
And then speaking of which, so then the invasion scene I think is so well done.
Right. The one like the beginning.
Yeah, so when they finally invade Arrakis, when the Harkonnen and the Sardaukar invade Arrakis, and first it starts very creepy. It was actually legitimately kind of scary, because you don't know what's gonna happen. Like, you feel like Duke Leto, something's gonna happen to him, but then he sees this dead person, no one's responding, it's really dark. It's like, well, is he gonna die now? Like, what's gonna happen to him? And then the thing paralyzes him, and then it's just all out war. The soldiers come running out, and we get some really, like, though when you see the bombs like come down and they like kind of slow down and then they speed up when they get through the shield.
Yeah,
it's brilliant.
Another scene that just like the scale is so huge. And I saw gosh, I forget who said it. Maybe it was on Twitter. Everything I ever talk about is from Twitter. But they were kind of talking about how, if you remember, when Duncan Idaho gets in one of the Thopters, and he kind of kills a few of the Harkonnen soldiers, and kind of scares off a couple of the other ones, because like they don't really care to let him go, because they're not really fighting out of love. Like they're not really loyal to who they're serving. But then when it comes to the Atreides army, they're taking on the Harkonnen soldiers, and then the Sardaukar show up, and they're like ready. Like they're like, we're gonna fight to the end. That kind of shows like their loyalty based on how the Atreides lead compared to something like the Harkonnens. I thought that was a super interesting observation.
Yeah, totally. I really like that scene. I mean, Duncan. So, speaking of actors that are really good, Jason Momoa is incredible.
He was really good. I was like, okay.
He's so likable.
He is so likable. At first, I was like it was a little jarring because he didn't have any facial hair.
Yeah.
And I was like, he looks different.
They shave him. It's like, oh no.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah.
I love that scene, and after the invasion's happening, and he's like fighting his way out, and he's killing the Sardaukar, and then he finds, I don't know, it's like 6 Harkonnen, and he kills like 3 or 4 of them easily. Yeah. And then the other guys are just like,
they do a good job of showing just how good of a fighter he is. And especially, I mean, unfortunately, when he dies, but before then, I mean, he takes on like an entire legion and sacrifices himself again, like that sacrifice that their soldiers are willing to make. It's really cool.
Yeah, totally. There's also that great scene where he finds Jessica and Paul, and he's just like distraught,
right?
Over what's happened.
Yeah.
And he pleads fealty.
Yeah.
My Duke.
I know.
To young baby Paul. They have this great. They created a great relationship between him and Paul in the film.
They did. I wish we saw. I'm sure we will see.
Gurney.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Gurney Halleck will make more appearances, but they also have an interesting relationship. We did see them kind of spar in the beginning, and that was interesting. Gurney is a little less of a jokester, but in the book he plays whatever the Dune verse guitar is called. It's called like
the baluster.
Baluster. Yeah. And we didn't get any of that. And that was one of the ones that I saw was like a deleted scene that they did have. What was that eyebrow raise?
Well, we're going to have a discussion about an extended version, and
that's right.
That's a part of the discussion that we
Right.
would have, I guess.
I have seen a lot that we missed out on.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching something from a trailer, and it was a shot that wasn't in the film of like the Gom Jabbar scene, where like it's just the two of them walking to the room or something like that. I could tell that it was from that scene, and it was just a shot of them walking in front of like a furnace, and it was beautiful. Honestly, it was one of those beautiful shots to see. But they cut it out of the movie.
Yeah.
So there's so much stuff that got cut. Anyway, we'll broach that topic. Yeah. So this is, and the invasion scene too is so good because of just like the scale. Like there's a couple of shots. There's this one shot where there's the ship, this massive ship, and then it fires a bunch of like missiles that then go into more missiles, and just it destroys a bunch of stuff in the city, and it's like, whoa. This is it's really daunting. It just shows you how daunting this whole thing is and how doomed they are. The Atreides are doomed.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, devastating. Like it kind of takes you a minute to realize like what just happened. Like everything they have is destroyed. Everyone is dead. And then you get that shot of Paul and Jessica going up over the peak of the sand dunes, and they're, oh my gosh, that's your whole life, and your dad's dead, just like that. Well, they didn't know that until like 20 minutes later.
Yeah.
And I like how they could just feel it, you know.
Yeah. Total doom.
Yeah.
I think that's that scene is really, really good, and yeah, that shot is great too, because it's just like everything is there. You see everything. You see the total destruction.
Yeah.
And you see how just how they're basically on their own at that point.
Yeah.
They were basically on their own. There's barely anyone to help them. The whole, the Emperor's against them. They've been moved against, and they've been, defeated.
Yeah. The politics are really interesting, kind of how they realized the Emperor had set them up. Yeah, they're totally alone. Everyone's after them. And I was gonna say, going back to the scene, that the special effects are like seamless.
They're amazing. I mean, the Thopters in this movie are so amazing.
So cool. Yeah, the design for everything was so spot on and so cool.
It's just like, wow. Like, and Thopters are it's something that Da Vinci kind of made up. It's like, oh, it'd be like if it flew like this.
Yeah, exactly.
And to see that adapted into sci-fi is so cool.
Yeah, it was interesting that they didn't mention how like AI is like banned in the Duneverse. I wonder why, because I saw someone, they were like, this is like the year 10,000, they're still using scrolls to like announce things. It's like, yeah, they didn't really mention that like thinking machines are completely outlawed.
Yeah, so yeah, and there are memtats. I don't know if you want to just talk about that a bit, and if you felt like that was excluding that was kind of a big deal for you or not, like talking explicitly about it.
You kind of mean how they kind of, because they did show Thufir Hawat kind of doing his little his eyes rolled back into his head, and all of a sudden he like knew something. I know. I wonder if they'll get into that. That is another thing that they kind of just totally. But I feel like that's enough. Like clearly there are these people who can do this. He's serving as an advisor to Leto. I didn't really feel upset. Do you feel like they should have gone deeper?
I really don't, honestly. It's a bit confusing, but it's a bit like going into the deep end. Do I think that we need to know that there was a war against AI and that there was like a commandment, thou shalt not make AI? I don't know if it really affects Paul's story a bunch.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now, I think it's something that they will explicitly talk about probably in the second film.
Yeah.
A little bit more. Or they'll just find a way to reference it. But
you're kind of right, though. It's kind of like we are viewing this world like this is how it is. And yeah, when you adapt something in books, you can talk about whatever you want. But when you adapt something into a film, you're right. Like everything that's integral to Paul's journey should be included. But otherwise, yeah, it's just kind of like not completely necessary. And you can show it in like a 5-second moment. And, it's there for people to interpret.
Yeah, it's cool lore, but it doesn't really affect where we're at this moment in the film. because there's spaceships and there's people fighting and killing each other. We don't need to worry about the AI killing people.
Yeah.
It's a human conflict. That's what's kind of beautiful about it. So I didn't mind that, but yeah, there were definitely people that and the Mentats are basically human machines. Like they do big calculations instead of machines because AI is banned.
Right.
Right. And my understanding is like the AI got banned because there was basically there was Skynet. There was an AI that decided to bomb some people.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know like all the history of it. I just knew that had, and even Frank Herbert kind of like passively mentioned like the war.
It's like the Clone Wars.
Yeah, true. Yeah, so I don't think that's totally necessary. I think what Denis did was great.
Yeah, I think it works. And we do see Peter de Veers doing it a little bit, like when Rabba comes and says, "Oh, all our ships left." He's also doing some Mentat.
Yeah, I don't remember if I saw. I know because you didn't really know that like Piter and Thufir were playing that same role. Like both had that certain kind of ability, or maybe you did and I just didn't notice. But I didn't see Piter have any like eyes rolling into the back of his head.
Yeah. So yeah. Speaking of which, let's talk about the Harkonnen. So how did you feel about the way they were depicted, and the way that their world was depicted? All of this stuff. What did it make you feel when you saw it?
I loved it a lot. Definitely very different from David Lynch, his interpretation of it, which was very much like Spaceballs, like very goofy and disgusting. I did like how kind of just like dark and desolate it was. There are also a lot of Apocalypse Now comparisons people are making with the Baron. I thought that was really cool. I did not pick up on that. I thought that was really cool. But I loved it. We didn't see too much of them, I feel like, and we will get to see more. But I like how they're all very just like pale, and the Baron is disgusting. I didn't know how they were gonna do that, but I liked his suspensors and how he kind of like floated around. He was kind of like this ghoul-like figure. There's a shot when Leto is like naked and lying in that chair, and he's in focus, and the Baron is kind of in the back. Just this figure like floating down that long table. He definitely did a great job making him seem just pretty terrifying, I think.
Yeah, I love Baron Harkonnen in this. Like he gets so many good lines.
He does.
When is a gift not a gift? I mean, I love that. I just love that. And it's really brilliant because like, one thing I will say is like, again, we don't see the Emperor like another movie that we know in the first movie. And they kind of like the reasons for the political machinations, they don't explicitly get into it to save time, which I understand. But in that scene, he basically just lays it all out. This isn't a gift. And then he says, what is this? Like the Atreides' voice is rising and the Emperor is a jealous man, a dangerous, jealous man. And that's it. That's why they're going to kill him.
Like the audience has got to do some heavy lifting. Like this is not a Marvel movie that being our blockbuster. Like this is a blockbuster, but it's a philosophical and intellectual blockbuster. Like, yeah, it like really important information happens so quickly that even I was like, oh my gosh, if I hadn't read the book, I'd be gasping for air.
Like you said, they're kind of running through it like really quickly in a way. But I think they're going to do some like kind of reverse engineering in a way, like when we get to the second one, because we're gonna see the Emperor, we're gonna see the princess and these other people, and then we're gonna start to like kind of because like it's very simple to like kind of explain that, like Paul meets with the Emperor, it's like, oh, you were mad at my father because he was becoming more popular than you, so you tried to kill us all,
right?
And that explains it, right?
Yeah, no, literally that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's it, and then the rest is just some political machinations, but yeah, and I really liked the scene when the Reverend Mother comes to meet with them. Again, we got that weird spider thing, which I mean was super creepy, and again, it could set up them doing experiments on people, creating clones or whatever, or some other weird kind of hybrids. It kind of plays into Dr. Yue. Like, were they going to do that to Dr. Yue's wife, maybe?
Really?
Splice her into some insect.
Yeah. Go on.
And I love, like, so the Reverend Mother basically says, you know, okay, the Emperor's going to strengthen your hand. So she's like the voice of, she's telling them, like, that's how powerful she is. She's the one who's conferring this information to him.
Exactly.
And then she's like, I love this line's like, it's like, yeah, the Atreides will die in the dark. On that matter, you can kill Leto. We're fine with you killing him. Don't kill Jessica or Paul.
Yeah. Girls supporting girls.
Yeah. And I find that so funny because, like, number one, this guy is super powerful and important, but to the Bene Gesserit, he's nothing. And he's dead. Like, he is dead because of that.
Right.
He is dead.
No, I know. I know, because he's just a guy. He doesn't have any of these Bene Gesserit. I mean, he's a great and sympathetic leader, which is a really cool characteristic of that character. But yeah, I did think it was interesting, just all this backdoor political stuff going on.
Mm-hmm. And then he promises her, oh yeah, I won't kill them. And then she leaves, and then he's like, you know, I'm not going to kill them, but Arrakis is Arrakis.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm just going to put them to the place where they're not going to survive.
I'm gonna throw them to the sandworms.
Yeah, but
My
yeah,
desert.
My Arrakis.
My Dune. Yeah, I love that. Oh, dude.
So crazy.
He gets so many good lines in this movie.
He does. I know every single line is just stands on its own.
Really good. And then after he gets poisoned and he's recovering, and Rabba comes and tells him, "Oh, they're dead. They flew into this thing, and there's no way they could live." He's like, "Great. You know what I need from you? Income." I love that. It just shows that just the embodiment of greed, you know?
No, later, I know, like, gluttonous, like, yeah. And he was, I made this comparison in my video that he's like Denethor from Lord of the Rings, because they also have a scene of him eating, and he's just, like, so disgusting.
The evil eating, yeah.
And the scene you were just talking about when he's just in this tub, this, like, vat of, like, oil, whatever they're using to heal him, I don't know. That he's just, like, soaking in.
It's like he's soaking in, like, the tears of poor children and across the universe or something.
And then he has his little, like, whatever those little servants are with, like, the all black eyes. Definitely so much. Nothing is normal. Like it's such an interesting world.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, the world building is so good.
So good.
Because they all feel so distinct and different, and
exactly.
Because they all feel like they're kind of just like clones of each other.
On the Harkonnen. Yeah, you're right.
It just feels like there's like a base person, because they're all bald. They're all like super, albino. Yeah. Very white. And they just kind of like, okay, this is the soldier one. This is the smart one. This is the fat one.
They have all kind of got these round heads too. I think you're right.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool. So yeah, why don't we talk about, so were there any things that were different between the book and the film that really kind of stuck out, either good or bad, or just in any way that,
I think my answer is like, no. Besides the banquet scene, there wasn't a lot. Most of it, it's like, I get why they didn't include this. And I get that they had to take so much out to keep it down to an okay runtime. But I just think that Denis has such a good understanding of the source material and the themes. Like, he totally gets it. I mean, he's wanted to adapt this since he was 16 years old. So yeah, honestly, that's like an uninteresting answer, but I truly thought it was like such a perfect and cathartic adaptation. Every single scene, like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exact. And given I read the book after I knew who was cast in the movie, I was like, this is exactly how I pictured this scene in my head. It was excellent. In a way,
that's great.
I kind of wish I could have seen the movie as someone who hadn't read the book, because you were talking about like, oh, we didn't know if like Leto was gonna die, and I did know everything that, like, I was never shocked, but it was just really cool to watch and kind of see it all play out visually.
Totally. And because, like, I almost feel like this is almost like a Godfather-esque story. Like, you know that there's some, like, a part of the plot is that the Messiah figure has to lose everything, and then he rises up from nothing. So you kind of just based on the premise, you kind of know, okay, something bad's gonna happen to the dad, at least for sure.
Yeah,
maybe the mom too. But what's interesting is like what happens after that, and like what that does to Paul, because he's the main character. He's the character we care the most about.
Right.
So
and it was really important to him to make his dad proud. Like, clearly they had a good relationship. And I put out a feeler on Twitter to see how people interpreted the bowl symbolism. That was pretty consistent. The coolest answer I got was that it was like, okay, clearly Leto's father died because he was into bullfighting. And Leto died because he was so caught up in like these external enemies that he was totally blind to the fact that it was happening internally, and like that ended up being his downfall. I thought that was really interesting.
He was kind of doing the political bullfighting.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's doing all this power brokering, and again, it's not explicitly stated really strongly in the film, but like he was becoming a powerful person. He was becoming a threat to the emperor. And, again, they don't talk about this explicitly, but the reason that he wasn't married was for political reasons, so that he could potentially have a political marriage to align himself and get more power.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, he was doing all these things, and he was, doing the thing with the bull, and then the bull got,
Yeah, exactly.
It was a political bull, not an actual bull.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that, because it seems like it's made pretty explicit that the Atreides, at least Duke Leto, is like an Iberian type of guy, like someone who'd be Portuguese or Spanish, and that's still a big part of their culture. I mean, me and my girlfriend went to a Portuguese, like in Portugal, like the island she's from, like they call it bulls in the street.
Oh, isn't it like they have like the running of the bulls or something?
Yeah, they have the running of the bulls in Spain.
Okay.
They still have arenas, and again, so bulls. The thing that they do in this island in Portugal is they will let the bull out. It'd be like if you were in your neighborhood and then someone let out a bull, and then people were running away from the bull.
It's just running around.
And you were on your porch or you were on your balcony watching people running away from the bull. That's what people do. So it's just it works on so many levels. It works on the level of like, that's a really strong part of that type of culture, and that's who this person is. That's what their lineage is. And it speaks to kind of the dangerous nature of how they live. It's a part of their upbringing is to like kind of tempt fate.
Right.
And fate is the bull. And it's like, but you're, like there's a skill to it too. There's also a charisma with it. But you can only dodge the bull for so long before it get hit with the horns.
Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, I like that on a lot of levels. I don't know if that was made the same way in the book, but I really like the visual metaphor.
I do think, there was kind of they hang the horns of the bull up on the wall with like his father's blood still on it. It's like very, very dark and kind of messed up.
Wow.
But it definitely is a thing in the book. And like Denis obviously likes to use symbolism in his movies like that.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting touch.
Yeah, because we see the bull over and over and over again.
Yeah,
like when he dies,
he's very like, yes, I'm showing you this. This means something.
Yeah, and like that little figurine, that little like jade figurine of like the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's there's something there.
Right.
So definitely the banquet scene was a thing that I've heard a lot of book readers kind of saying, "Oh, I wish that was there." Another couple things related to Dr. Yue. So like there's this concept of Imperial conditioning, which is this idea of basically it's why Dr. Yue should not have been able to betray them, because they condition these people who are their, servants or whatever, to be incapable of betraying them. But somehow the Baron was smart enough to get him to be able to do it so he could betray him.
Right. Which
is kind of interesting. They did kind of, again, gloss over a lot of the intrigue. I do still think that Jessica she comes off as very, like, we just don't know where she lies. We have no idea who she's really aligned with. but it doesn't really seem like it seems like it's kind of the Bene Gesserit and not any specific person or entity.
I don't even know if she's like completely aligned with the Bene Gesserit. I feel like she's very rebellious and very headstrong, even though she kind of suffers because of it. But she kind of, I feel like she's very much her own person. But she truly loved Leto and loved Paul. I feel like honestly, like she's very much at like, I'm gonna protect my family.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of agree with that. And the one scene that really sticks out in my mind with her is like her and Leto talk, and she's like, I have to tell you something about Paul. He's like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't care. I know I'm probably going to die. It's like, whatever, just protect my son, because I wanted a son and you gave me a son and I got him now, but he's off in the sky, in the stars, doing whatever. I've lost him.
Right.
But I want the Bene Gesserit to protect him. Can you at least tell me that much? And she never answers that question. She says, yes, I'll protect him with my life. But he's like, no. Will the Bene Gesserit protect him? And she never answers that question. Oh, why are you thinking like this? And I'm like, uh-oh.
Interesting. I thought that maybe I read the scene wrong. I thought that he was like, not you as a Bene Gesserit. Like, will you protect Paul? Like, not just because you're carrying out your duties.
Sure, yeah.
I'm
like,
not sure.
Will you protect him as a Bene Gesserit? You mean? Like will you use your powers?
No, I think he was like, will you protect Paul? And she was like, with my life. And he was like, I'm not asking you as a Bene Gesserit. I'm asking you as his mother. Like, will you protect him?
Didn't he say, I'm not asking his mother? I'm asking the Bene Gesserit? I think
maybe it was swapped. I don't know. It's a very important distinction, because I think that totally changes how that scene comes across.
It's something to rewatch, right?
Yeah, it is. I know literally so much to pick up on a rewatch. Because you're right. Yeah, I saw it in IMAX twice, and then I watched it once more at home, and I still don't know.
Yeah. There was a couple scenes like where I really wanted to hear the dialogue, because the other part of it too is like there's all this world building stuff. Yeah. Like when they're out in the sand, he's like stepping on something, and then he like says a line. What he says is drum sand. And drum sand is like the sand in the desert that makes a really loud sound when you step on it, so it attracts a worm. That I was like, what? There's a couple.
That. I don't remember that from the book.
That's
because they're two words that like you wouldn't think would be together. So unless you like see the subtitle and you're like, he did say drum sand, but now I still don't know what that is. So definitely like watching it in theaters and then watching it at home with subtitles. That's the complete Dune experience.
Yeah, the complete experience, yeah. So another thing that they don't really explicitly get into is like, so the Space Guild and the Space Guild navigators.
Right.
Now, another scene I really, really like is when the Herald of the Change comes. So I love that guy who they got to be the Herald.
Right. When they come and they're doing all the Arrakis.
They do.
Transfer business.
Henceforth, you will be take over Arrakis immediately. Dude, I really love that guy. Like he knew the assignment. And I'm sure he read for that thing like once or twice, and they're like, oh, that dude. Yeah. He's gonna kill it.
That whole entourage, like it's like he just had like this very perfect like Imperial face, and then all these people in these like, oh my gosh, like weird like space masks, and it's kind of creepy.
I loved it. So like And the thing too, again, this is another thing I'm sure we're going to see in part two, because they, like he talks about, I'm here with people from the court. It's like the what do they call it? I forget. I'm sorry. But basically it's like the Imperial court, and there's these people who look like they're at a Daft Punk or something, and they have these cool helmets.
That's exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, and then it's like people from the Space Guild, and they're holding these like, it's like a cane or something. No, it's a rod. Yeah, they're holding rods, and their like mask is all orange. Now, again, they don't explicitly get into that in the film, but like that's spice. That's like pure spice. Like
I did not
right
know
into your
that.
veins. Yeah, because like they need the spice to navigate, and so they pump the spice right into their veins, basically.
Yeah, that's extreme. I know there is so much like, oh my gosh, like space and time travel, and like David Lynch opened up his film with the third guild navigator. I was like, that. Why would you do that? No one knows. I don't even know what that is. But yeah, the spice is so powerful. Like what's happening to Paul, it's like he's like slowly ingesting this psychedelic drug, basically, that has like much more of an effect on him than the people around him. That's like intense stuff.
Yeah, he like you're talking about that scene when he gets off the Thopter and they're trying to rescue all the people from the worm. It's about the spice harvester, and he just gets that hit with it, and he's
it's like, ooh.
And then you hear the voice, dude, it's so good, and he hears the voice, and like you said, the use of silence. Like there's part of that, he gets hit with a wave of spice and just goes silent, and he's like about to like cover his nose, and he's like, he kind of stops.
Yeah. Like, ooh, give me another hit.
Yeah. It's a little contact high. It's brilliant. It's really brilliant.
Really good.
But yeah, I love that scene with the Herald of this change, because I'm sure in the book it was kind of matter of fact, like the way that they talk about, oh yeah, he has to take over, it's gonna happen, it's happening, blah blah blah, and then they take over. But there's so much stuff that they're able to put into that scene, and there's some really brilliant editing in that scene, because like it tells you a lot of stuff without saying anything. Like the guy's like, oh, I'm here with the Space Guild and people from the royal court and a sister of the Bene Gesserit, and then it cuts directly to Jessica and then to Paul, and it's like kind of creating this kind of like almost alignment. You know what I'm saying? Like how where people are aligned, it's like the two of them are on this side. That's their actual alignment. And then Leto is like in this political alignment that has to do with these other people. I thought that was very interesting. It just tells you everything about the world, basically.
Yeah, I hadn't picked up on that. But yeah, that's so subtle. It's kind of like, like the camera is telling you stuff that I know. Wow, you gotta have like a film degree to like get every part of this movie. Yeah,
it felt very, and again, it's subtle, and it's not something that really, it just goes into your brain. It goes as you're seeing.
Yeah, but it's making those associations.
Yeah. But it's very deliberate. Like, and she even like gives a look. The Bene Gesserit sister gives a look, and you can kind of see Jessica almost match the look. It's like their eye lines are meeting.
Right.
And it's like. And then there's all this like they're looking at each other, and like Paul's giving his
like
dad.
Like they're picking up on like 7 other layers beyond everyone, like of this interaction. Yes. Everyone else is only looking at it in one way.
Yes, they are, absolutely. And yeah, that was another interesting thing too. That kind of, I feel like, I kind of talked about it a little bit before, but it always feels like Lady Jessica is like picking up on more,
right?
But she doesn't know. But she's like concealing information.
Interesting.
And it's just like, why? What is her role? What is her plan in all of this?
Exactly. And that's why it is such an emotional burden, because she has this full picture of like exactly what the implications are of all of this, and it's not good.
Yeah, exactly. But she has her role to play.
Exactly.
I didn't. So like at this point in where we're at in the film, does she even know like all the things about herself and her past, and like, or is that also concealed from her?
In terms of what?
To say her ancestry.
Oh.
Like the reason why they wanted her to be with Leto.
Oh my god, I literally forgot about that.
Yeah.
No, she doesn't. Don't.
Yeah, she
don't.
That's something that that's something that will happen in the second one. I'll just put that.
Oh my god, I forgot about that. I'm like reliving it. It's traumatizing. I doubt she knows.
There's so much in this.
There's so much. I forget exactly how that happens, but I feel like that's another thing that Paul is like how he knew she was pregnant. I feel like it's like pregnant. Paul would be like, yo, I like know something about you. I don't want to tell you.
Because that's also something about him.
Oh,
that's something about Paul too.
Yeah, exactly.
Oof. Yeah.
That's gonna be a big moment.
Okay, so now let's have kind of the big discussion, the fun discussion. It's fun.
Yes.
So there's been a lot of like one of the topics that keeps coming up, and I think it's going to keep coming up for a while. At least, well, I'll give you my perspective on it, but we can talk about it. So there's a lot of scenes that are out there that got cut from the film. For probably different reasons, maybe for length of time, maybe for pace, maybe because they just didn't totally work. And a lot of Dune fans are now asking for an extended cut. They want to see an extended cut, or at least get deleted scenes where we can see some of these scenes. Some people have speculated that there was a version of the banquet scene that was shot. I've seen something where it was like a scene of Dr. Yue talking with Paul, where he like gives Paul like a Bible. There's Dr. Yue talking with Lady Jessica, where Dr. Yue brings up his wife. There's fun stuff like Gurney Halleck playing the ballast. I think I saw recently on Twitter a scene where like Baron Harkonnen left a present for Duke Leto. I don't know if you saw that recently. Yeah. No. And it was like some mangled human stuff or something.
Wow.
Yeah. So it seems like there's a lot of stuff that's out there, more Dune stuff. Even the trailers, it seems like the Gom Jabbar scene was extended because there were lines that were in some of the trailers. She said where the Reverend Mother was talking about Arrakis' death trap. I mean, I love that line. Oh my god. Anyway,
I know.
So what are your thoughts on the potential for an extended cut? Would you like one? What are your thoughts? What are your feelings?
Of course I would like one. I don't know, like you've done more research on this than me, but I heard that Denis was like, no. I heard that he said no, that he wouldn't put one out. I can't see a reason why you wouldn't do that. Like Lord of the Rings has an extended cut. Like even if they released like an exclusive Blu-ray, oh my gosh, I would buy that in a second. If they had like deleted scenes or an extended edition, because like he obviously wants to tell this more dense, jam-packed story. I would watch a 3.5 hour version of this movie. So I don't see why not. What do you think about it?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that excites me in deleted scenes, to be honest.
I didn't know about some of the stuff you were just talking about. Like if they shot it, like, oh my gosh, yes, I want to see that.
Oh, it's just the surface. I mean, there was another planned opening where Duncan Idaho does a helo drop from space to meet the Fremen.
Oh my god. Yeah, I heard that there were scenes of him when he was actually living with the Fremen that they took out.
Yeah. Now again, some of this stuff may be used in the second film. So I guess would I like to see it? The answer is yes. My full answer is that I think that there's no potential for it until both films are out, or at least until the full scope of Denis Villeneuve's Dune is out. I don't think that we're really gonna see anything until he's done making his Dune films. Basically.
That's a good point.
Because there's stuff that's in this film that could be used in the second film, or even if they did Dune Messiah, that could be used in Dune Messiah. So I suspect that there's some stuff that we're going to see. And there's even, like, I had heard that, what's that scene where Lady Jessica drinks, like, the water, the Fremen have this water that you drink.
It's like the water of, like, or like the
water of life, maybe.
Yeah, it's like this weird, like, worm water.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So they shot that scene already.
That scene.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I suspect that we're going to see that in the second movie, and that's kind of going to be where we start-ish. Maybe they'll, because like the second film could start with like basically almost like a flashback or some kind of context for what happened in the first film, and then take us to more stuff. So they could give us stuff that's already shot. So Dune fans, we could still see it. If it didn't make part one, it could be in part two. Maybe part two is going to be even longer. So I suspect that we will see some stuff that didn't make it in this film in the second film. But also, I think that we'll probably potentially see at some point an extended cut, but it could be a little bit of a wait. It might be 3 years or 2 years after all of the Denis Villeneuve Dune films are completed.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we will get it eventually, because really there isn't like, it's not like it's like, oh, it wasn't like his creative vision, so he doesn't want it because it is, you know, like this. He clearly had a plan, and then you know, production obviously always messes it up a little bit, but yeah, I think we definitely will see. I think it was the Water of Life. I think we will see the Water of Life scene because that really affects Jessica's pregnancy. That's not really a spoiler. That's vague enough to not be a spoiler. I don't even know in like our dream casting conversation, is it a spoiler to talk about characters that haven't been introduced yet?
I think for sure the Emperor, like we know we're gonna get the Emperor.
Yes.
We know the Emperor has an eldest daughter. And
right.
I don't think that's really a spoiler to speculate.
Well, we know Jessica's pregnant, so that's true. And Fade doesn't matter. We can.
Yeah, doesn't matter. Yeah.
He's just another Harkonnen. I wonder if one of the things that wasn't in here with the Baron is that the Baron has like weird, like homoerotic energy that I think is really interesting. But I think it's a lot of it's targeted towards Fade.
Oh,
if I remember correctly. So maybe that dynamic will come into play because that makes him even more creepy.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, people were like, I haven't really seen a lot of the Dune 84, but people have said that the homosexual angle was very problematic. In that film.
Okay, David Lynch definitely leaned into it. It's definitely there.
Because he also had STDs and stuff too.
He had a lot. He had like boils on his face. He doesn't talk about like his. Well, actually, he does, but that was in the book. Like he was really creepy in the book.
Yeah. I'm kind of glad that they kind of left that out. I mean, it's enough that he's eating all the time. He's super fat, and you know, I remember seeing a review from someone and they felt like it was implied that he did something to Leto, something sexual. Because, like, you know, why else is this dude just naked?
He's just naked. I mean, and I do think it was like he was getting a little too close for comfort. Like, I think Denis definitely, obviously, he knew that that's a thing, and I think he made it subtle enough that you're getting creeped out. But yeah, like people found David Lynch is problematic. Like he's not going too far with it.
Yeah, and like you said, the book it's you know it's kind of cartoonish in a lot of ways in the way that they depict. You know, it's like, okay, this guy's really bad.
Yeah, just like outlandishly, like terrible. Yeah.
Okay, so Princess Iruli. How do you say her name?
I think it's Irulan. That's how the audiobook said it, but apparently the audiobook was wrong.
Maybe, yeah. So Princess Irulan, who would you like to see?
So what I've seen online, Anya Taylor-Joy seems to be the fan favorite. I don't know. For some reason, I don't like that idea. I don't know why. I've thought of some other options. I saw someone say Florence Pugh, but I also don't like that idea for some reason. I feel like she has to be very just like almost like generic looking, just like perfectly conventional face and just beautiful. I thought of I'm gonna forget her name now. She's Michael Fassbender's wife. She was just Alicia
I know.
Vikander.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was one of my ideas. And I think she'd look pretty blonde. She could do it. Do you have any ideas?
Your description made me one of the first things that came into my head was Emma Roberts. Like when you said that, Emma Roberts came into my brain. Like,
interesting. That's a really interesting. Yeah. Any like, I don't know. Yeah. There are so many options. I thought of Ellie Fanning.
Oh, yes. I like that. I think
she's very
she's very tall and she's very like, she does have a kind of
like a royalty, like she's very like long neck, like she's very
absolutely
tall, and so that could be interesting.
Okay, so how about the Emperor?
The Emperor, I don't know. Like I thought about it and I was like, I'm very much not familiar with like scary older actors, but I saw Mads Mikkelsen.
That's a cool.
That would be very interesting. And what have you thought of?
This one is a little bit harder. I haven't nothing like springs precisely to mind.
People thought of who I know, I'm bad with these names too. Who played President Snow in the Hunger Games?
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
His name's totally escaping me.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
People were like, maybe that would be a little bit redundant. because he kind of played like the big bad in like another.
It's like typecasting.
Already. Yeah. True.
But does he feel too old? How old should the actor feel?
Maybe he should feel like maybe. I think
like
I'm envisioning
50s,
like
60s?
Mid to late 50s. Yeah, he's old. Definitely, he's got gray hair, and he looks old. He looks older, but middle, like a little bit older than middle aged, probably. But yeah, not too old, because his daughter's young.
Yeah, but this could be a great role for just like some kind of established actor, you know, like someone that you see a lot, but they've passed from being, you know, the it guy to being now you're just older, but you're still got that name. You know, when I say that, the first person that comes to my mind is George Clooney. Ironically,
interesting. You know who else? Who just played the old guy in Last Night in Soho?
I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
is that his name? Terrence Stamp.
Terrence Stamp, I believe. Yeah, that's right.
He was frightening.
He's a little scary. He's got a scary look.
I think it's definitely got to be someone scary. A little bit more on the definitely not like too thin. He's got to be capable and kind of regal.
Kind of British.
At the same time. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, very British.
This is something where they would throw, you know, one of the three British amigos of, you know, sci-fi fantasy. Peter Cushing. Who's the other one? Oh my God, I'm forgetting the guy who played Saruman.
He died, didn't he?
He did die. Yeah, he was old.
It was Christopher something. I thought
Christopher Lee.
Yes.
Lee. Yeah. Like they'll like a younger like Christopher Lee.
He would have been
great. Perfect.
God rest his soul.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Christopher Lee would have been like I think that's like you need an older British guy, like a British guy in his 50s who's a little over the hill. But I mean, I've been thinking a lot of putting what's his name in I forget. It's Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth Branagh is another. I feel like he's in an interesting time in his career because he still looks really good. He's a great actor, but he's kind of, you know, he's not 30. Yeah, but that's kind of good because then he can
some salt and pepper hair. Call it a day. But you think he should be British? The Emperor should have a British accent.
Maybe not accent, but a British actor.
Okay.
You know, British actor.
I like it.
But yeah, so those are I guess my ideas. How about was it Fayed Rutha?
Oh, Fade. Yeah, the audiobook said Fade Routha. Barry Cogan. Is that how you pronounce it?
Or something?
Yeah.
Cogan, yeah. Cogan, I think Cogan's right.
So yeah, I'm about to see him in Eternals on Thursday. Everyone wants him and they're like, he's so good at just playing like a weird little dude. And I honestly think he would be perfect. He's probably my choice through and through.
Yeah. So that was the Sting. Sting played.
Yeah, I know. And David Lynch's.
David Lynch's too.
Sting. Sting was an interesting cast because he's also just like a weird guy. It's got to be someone who's willing to be crazy, be a little eccentric.
Yeah, do the weird really well.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Any other characters or that you're really excited about seeing that you kind of have an interest in? Who the casting for it would be?
Yeah. So Aaliyah is definitely going to come into play, who is the daughter of Lady Jessica, sister of Paul. This one I've thought a lot about, and if they don't age her up, definitely Thomasin McKenzie. And if they do age her up, Thomasin McKenzie. If they don't age her up, Brooklyn Prince from the Florida Project, I think would be perfect because she's got to be. I'm not going to spoil. She's got to be a very capable actress for where that character is going to go.
Yeah, we need a strong performance.
Yes,
for what we're going to get
for sure. Very intellectual performance. So yeah,
that's exciting. Cool. Yeah. So I guess the last thing. So like, you know, there were definitely, you know, we talked about this a little bit before. This is Dune Part 1, and the Part 1 threw some people off, and the way this film ends kind of maybe threw some people off. How do you feel about the ending of this film? Did it feel satisfactory to you? Do you think those sort of criticisms are valid, or what was your take on the way the film ends?
I do think they're valid, and I think there's a reason why it's not being universally received in the way that like Lord of the Rings was, maybe, because this was a little bit more of like, we didn't know if we were getting a part 2 at the time that everyone was watching it. I really think they should have given it the Lord of the Rings treatment and done everything in one go, so it's very cohesive and everyone kind of like knows what the deal is. So I totally understand those complaints. It absolutely feels like a part 1 because it ends, and if you don't understand the gravity of the story and kind of where it's going, you could be like, okay, I feel like not a lot happened. Like there was definitely a lot going on with these characters, but like there weren't very many completed arcs, and I don't think it's this film on its own is not nearly as impactful as I think the entire series is going to be when you look at it as a complete story. And that's why I even was like, seeing it in the theater was such an incredible and immersive experience, an intense experience. But then like looking back on the film, there aren't very many powerful emotions that are like staying with me. And I think that, because I compare it to The Last Duel. Like they're kind of toss-ups for me, like which is going to be like my favorite film of the year. Because The Last Duel is this completed arc. It's this completed messaging that really resonated with me. And Dune, it was a part 1. And so I think people are going to have to hang tight to really feel the impact of what Denis is doing. Yeah. How do you feel about it?
So I've thought a lot about this, or at least a fair amount, relative to what I think about in film. Right. There's a lot of things. So I think it's a pretty apt comparison to Fellowship of the Ring. I think the reason, I remember seeing Fellowship of the Ring having, basically I had a friend who was like kind of nerdy, and he was like, oh, hey, you should see this. Hey, you should read Harry Potter. Hey, you should play Magic the Gathering. Hey, you should watch Lord of the Rings. Oh my God, it's Lord of the Rings. We got to watch it. Okay, sure, fine. What makes that film, I think, really, really great is that the ending does a lot of things really right. So first off, we get a massive battle. So it gives us kind of the spectacle of it in a way that's satisfying. Right. And then it gives us 2 very strong, visceral, emotional punches for the 2 basically main characters who are going to follow through the rest of the journey. Frodo decides to leave, and Sam goes with him, and he's gonna die, but then he saves Sam. So that's like the emotional, like, first off, he's leaving his friends, and he saves his best friend, and they decide to go off together by themselves.
Right.
And then our other kind of main character, Aragorn, he kills a bunch of people in a really cool way, and then what's his name dies. Boromir dies.
That's
in his arms
every time. Yeah.
Boromir dies in his arms. And the thing that's really powerful about Boromir dying is that when they meet in Rivendell, Boromir says to him, Gondor needs no king, Gondor has no king. But then he's dying, and he calls him, you're my king.
Yeah.
So, that's a huge part of the story, is like, Aragorn has to embrace being the king again. And that's like the first step. He's going there. So we get really strong, really, really strong emotional moments at the end of that film that propel us forward.
Right.
In the rest of the story. And they do that in the second one as well. It's really, really brilliant. Now, this film does have moments like that with Paul. Paul fights Jamis. Jamis is like, he's saying all this really, like, Jamis is one of the best lines in the movie. In the dream, like when he talks about, we have to be a part of the process. Like, life isn't, I forget exactly what it says.
I think it's like, it's not a question to answer. It's like something to experience.
It's something to experience. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Great line.
It's like, oh my God, that's like so brilliant. And then he has to fight this guy. I mean, like, and when I saw this the first time, I was like, I was honestly kind of confused by what was going to happen. I wasn't sure, like, was he going to die? Was Paul going to die and then come back to life? Was Paul going to kill him and then bring him back to life? I wasn't really sure. But then, it's also, like you said, Paul has never killed anyone. So that's a huge thing. Right. He doesn't want to kill Jamis. He does not want to do it.
And just to interrupt for a second, that after he does kill Jamis, there's like that like ancestry, like Bene Gesserit voice that's saying like when you take a life, you give your own. That I thought was interesting.
Yeah. So it's a huge moment for him, and like you're saying, the Bene Gesserit, that ancestral voice is telling him, Paul must die so that the Kwisatz Haderach can rise. So this is a huge moment for him, and he does it. He kills him, and he becomes a Fremen. And then Stilgar says, "You're one of us now. You are one of us now. Now that you've done this." And then he makes that choice. His mom's like, "No, you have to get him off world. We have to get back to Caladan, our home planet," and blah, blah, blah. He's like, "No, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
My path leads to the desert. I can see it. If, I'm not here for spice. I'm not here for riches. I'm here for the strength of your people. And if you will have me, I will come with you." And they go off. And they see someone ride a worm, and it's great.
Yeah, I know.
I just think
that in the sequel too.
It doesn't hit as strong. It doesn't hit. There's something about this, because I think probably there's not a huge battle or something. It's very personal. It's very personal. It's very small, but there is the same kind of thing. Paul does have the same change at the end of this film.
Yeah, you're saying it doesn't hit as strong as Fellowship?
Yes, it does. It doesn't hit as strong because there's not a huge fight, and it's not as strongly emotional. It's not like he had a moment with Jamis where they were like, where he showed him like the potential future or something,
Yeah. I feel like I totally agree with you, and I feel like that's kind of rooted in this concept that like Dune is such a different story than Lord of the Rings or like Star Wars, whatever. It's not a typical hero's journey. It's not about good versus evil, and like it is. I know. I wonder why it didn't have that impact, because there are really huge implications of everything that's going on. And it is emotional, and we do get those interesting character moments, but maybe it's because it is kind of a more stoic film that it's resonating in that way.
I had a theory. So something I wrote about, there's a couple things, like things just listening to people talk about it. So one of the things to me, like why I've heard a lot of people say that it makes them feel kind of cold watching this, or they felt nothing. And I can kind of understand why, because so like there are some films that are trying to inherently create spectacle. They're trying to call our attention to things that are supposed to like be beautiful or be profound or be interesting or be, something that we're supposed to feel. And this film doesn't really do that. There's a grandeur to it. There's something about it that's amazing, but it's not drawing your attention to it. So it's just there. I mean, there's so many shots in this film to me that are kind of blow my mind. One of the things that we didn't talk about a lot, but like, so when the Atreides come to Arrakis, that whole sequence is like insane. And one of the most insane shots in this film is, so, we see these ships that bring all the other ships that come out of it. And it's this massive ship, and you see them going towards Arrakis. And then there's a shot looking up, and it's like super overexposed because you're looking into the sun, and you see these ships coming down. And it's honestly mind-blowing because it's so accurate to the sci-fi world that we're in. Right. But nothing draws your attention to this shot. Yeah. Nothing is telling you, oh, hey, you're seeing something really beautiful. It's just there.
Interesting.
It's just there. And you have to interpret that yourself. You have to like consume that and feel something yourself. There are other films, Star Wars or something. John Williams does an amazing job of creating a score that evokes a feeling of adventure or sorrow or something all the time. From the opening crawl to the end of the film, the score is inciting you to evoke an emotion.
Right.
It's not exactly the same. And I think that's a part of it.
That's a great point. Yeah, you gotta kind of have to be actively watching it, and it's one of those films that you do have to be watching it every second, like noticing what Denis has put on the screen, because he's not going to tell you. And that's a great point. Like, it's like yeah, you do have to kind of look back and be like, wow, that like it was a spectacle, but it was so like blended into what was happening, and it was so immersive that yeah, you got to kind of wonder like, oh my God, I did like this my second watch. I was like, I didn't even realize like how many of these massive ships are coming down. I'm like, I can only imagine like how many people there are and like the size of their army, and like you have all that information. They might not necessarily show it to you like all the time, but there are so many places for your mind to go. I think that's a good point because his cinematography or Denis films usually are like a little bit more minimalist. It's not as lush as something as Lord of the Rings, and it's very brutalist, just with the architecture and the environment. It is very different, so it's not surprising that it resonates differently.
Yeah, the other thing too, I was thinking about is this film is just, it's not escapist. It's very introspective,
right?
And that can hit people a certain way, you know, and it's not going to be for everyone, which is fine. And I think that's a lot of what it is about this film that kind of makes it hard for people to feel something, because it's not inciting you to feel anything. It's just presenting a world. It's trying to present this as being the future of our world today, not like saying, oh, well, this is some fantastical world and here's these things that you have to feel. Even though again, there are sound cues for the different houses and stuff in this film. The Atreides, they play the bagpipe.
That was awesome.
Yeah, they play the bagpipe as they go into battle. Even the Harkonnens, there's that dun dun and even the starter car, they play the throat singing. But it doesn't do like those things that films do to like make you feel something. It just lets you consume the images, and you feel what you're gonna feel.
Right. I think there's definitely something to be said about that. I do wonder, because Dune really is, well, it's kind of like, should you have these like really impactful like character relationships and like emotions, like interpersonal emotions, or can it just be like, this is like mostly about the themes and kind of like this larger thing going on about humanity and about religion, because it is a lot about that. And so is it okay that we don't have like our Boromir moment? It's kind of just like Leto died, we didn't really get to know him that well, and so we don't feel that way when he dies. We might understand the impact it has, but it's not so much about feeling sad when it comes to like the characters themselves.
Yeah, when you say that, the first thing I think of is Dunkirk. That's one of the first things I think. Really, it's Christopher Nolan, and specifically like Dunkirk and Tenet, two films where there's really a deliberate lack of character, but there is strong theme and strong plot.
Right. Because he's telling us more of a conceptual story than a character-driven one. Yeah, more plot-driven.
Yeah,
it's fine by me, but I get it if I can totally understand if people thought it didn't resonate in that way, and it's a valid complaint.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it's kind of it's interesting because like that was something for me, like definitely the first time I was like, wow, I don't know if I really connect with anything, and like the second time I watched it, I was like, knowing that this is a story about basically a mother and a son, and this mother's kind of maternal legacy that she's passing on to him was very interesting to me. And that kind of, because like the Jessica character, there's a lot to grab onto with her.
Right.
I'd say she's the character where there's the most for an audience to kind of grab onto and say, okay, there's something there that I can connect with.
It's interesting you say that, because I do feel like more of the film was from Jessica's perspective than it was Paul. We see what Paul's going through and we see the effect it has on Jessica, but we don't really know how Paul is perceiving things right now. And I wonder if that will change. And maybe it is a little more with like like you mentioned the editing earlier, maybe we're seeing maybe the camera was focusing on Jessica's reactions more often, and she was emoting more. But a lot of Paul's like inner conflict, you're not going to see that on shown on the screen. A lot of it comes through the visions, but the visions didn't get very brutal. So I don't know. I know it is a really interesting conversation, like what was going on with the character dynamics and whether Denis did a good job with that. But I do think it's going to get expanded on in part 2.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I definitely feel like there's a lot there with Jessica, and there's a lot there to question about her motives. There's a lot there where we see how much she really loves and cares for Paul, especially.
Right.
And that's something you can tell it's going to be continuing into the second film, is like, how is that relationship going to resolve itself? Where is she going to stand when, basically Paul reaches whatever the conclusion of his story is?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
cool. So yeah, any last thoughts, any parting thoughts, anything else you wanted to talk about?
I don't think so. We covered a lot. Mm-hmm. I was gonna say the one thing I want to tell people is go see it in theaters.
Yeah.
I know some people who are watching it at home, and that's fine. If you can't get to theaters or you don't feel comfortable because of COVID, but it is like if one movie has been made to be seen in the theater, it's this one.
Yeah, 100%. I'll say that this is one of the best films I've ever seen in an IMAX format.
Okay.
There are films where it's in IMAX, but it's like whatever, to be honest. Yeah. There's tons of films like that. The same with like 3D. It's just like a money grab.
Right.
But this film, the IMAX experience is one of the best ever. Like it's up there with like the Nolan films like The Dark Knight and, Dunkirk and Tenet. This film was made for IMAX, and I don't want to get too geeky on this, but like, make sure you go to an IMAX that's like a legit IMAX with a 1:3 aspect ratio. That's the big, gigantic, story tall screen. Because then you're getting the full experience of what this film is supposed to be. And I think that's the best way to experience the film, because you're going to really get the scope, scale, and feel of what this film is trying to do.
Yeah, it's the scale and just, you do, like, because when it's shot for IMAX, you miss out on a lot of the shot if you don't view it in that format. And even the stuff you were talking about earlier with the sounds, like he layered the sound in a way that's going to come through to you in IMAX and be more impactful.
Yeah. I saw this video from a guy the other day. He said he traveled 200 miles to see the film in IMAX.
Oh my God.
Legit IMAX. Yeah.
True fan.
Guy in the UK. Good on you, brother.
Yeah. Go you.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're watching this right now.
Yeah, right. Because you're losing 40% of the image if you see it in a different
Oh wow, I didn't know it was quite 40%. That's crazy.
40% of the image.
Yeah.
So that's a lot. And I'm telling you, like, when you see the invasion of Arrakis scene, it's totally different in that aspect ratio. When you see the desert crawler scene, like when you see that scene, it's like all shot in IMAX. It's totally different. When you see a worm in IMAX, like it's totally different. And basically the whole end of the film is all shot in IMAX.
Okay, so the whole film was not consistently shot in IMAX.
Yeah, not the whole film. Yeah, it's just some parts of it. Yeah, and you can see, like, if you're there, you'll see the aspect ratio change. Like it gets bigger.
I'll look out for that. I'll definitely watch this film a few more times before the second one comes out.
I would definitely. I heard some rumors that this film could come back to IMAX in December.
Okay.
But basically, this Thursday is the last time to see it in like an IMAX, legit IMAX, before it's gone for a while.
That was quick. That was only a couple of weeks. I feel like
it's 2 weeks.
Way longer.
Yeah. Well, basically, there's a battle for premium formats. Right now.
Especially right now. Yeah.
Because that's where a lot of the money is in being on Dolby and IMAX screens, because they make a lot of money. Like the most profitable screens are those.
Yeah.
In the country and in the world. So, and there's a reason why the experience is totally different. You cannot replicate that.
Exactly.
You can't. You're not going to get a 40-story screen.
Yeah, I don't care if you have surround sound or what.
Yeah, it's an incredible experience. I've seen it like 4 times in IMAX, and it's incredible. One of the best cinematic experiences I've had in a long time.
Me too.
Cool. Yeah. So on that note, go see Dune in theaters. See it in IMAX. See it wherever you can, however you can. It's amazing.
It's a big takeaway.
Cannot wait to see Dune Part 2. Cannot wait to see more from the Duneverse. Maybe there's going to be a TV show, the Sisterhood, the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood.
Yeah, I think they got confirmed. I think, right?
I think so. Yeah, they had to switch. Was showrunners, but they got a new showrunner. Okay. It seems like it could happen. HBO Max. I would, and I heard Rebecca Ferguson was like, I would do the show. I would be a part of the show.
Yeah, once she has time. I saw that too.
That's really cool.
Oh my gosh,
that's really cool.
So awesome.
I love the dedication. All right, cool. So signing off. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thanks for having me, Ibrahim.